So the Facebook is started. Yeah. So the Facebook is started. I'm sorry. I will just. Yeah. So the Facebook is started. That's not good. I will just. Might have to connect with the computer, or just okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to connect with another computer, so that I don't want two things happening. Just. Sorry, I didn't. I think I haven't found Kishore yet, but
still, yeah, we'll good to go.
Start, yeah. Okay, just I'm gonna start with my Hello everyone, this is Ashwikaya from Admanala Studios. Welcome to our Fashion Evolution event on impact of sustainability on developing nations. Before I start, I would like to thank all the guest speakers who have joined to our show today. And it is a very sensitive topic that I know I'm very delighted to have everyone today. And I'm thankful for the contributions of all the guest speakers who has joined the show today. The reason why we started doing this discussion is not just to create awareness, but also to take action and address the matters. Fashion industry is bread and butter to many people. And the way the industry has performed in the past years has destroyed the glory of true fashion. My question to all of you today is, can the change be brought forward through just lobbying activities calling on aims and objectives, or just by making more sustainable products? What actions do we need to take rather than just educating or creating awareness? Today, I've called some interesting speakers on board, and I'm also calling some of the passionate individuals in the fashion industry to join our Evolution Club. But today's topic on discussion is on impact on sustainability over developing nations. We are hosting our club event shortly in August. Anyone is interested to join the club, feel free to contact us at www.adamanalastudios.com. Before I start, I would like to introduce Prithvi Raj, who's going to introduce our guests who have joined for the show today.
Hello.
Hi, Prithvi.
Hey, hi, Ashwika. Hope all are safe. And amidst of this pandemic, I think we're doing a wonderful session, focusing more on the fashion industry, because everywhere talk about sustainability. That's the hot topic, but it's more focused on the fashion and its allied industries. So before we start, I would like each one of you to give a short intro about yourself. To start with, Ken Alston, a consultant, sustainable circular economy. Over to you. You can give a short intro, and one by one, you can just get.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Ken Alston. I'm a founding partner in a consulting firm Circularity Edge. I've been working in sustainability, it seemed like forever. For the first 20 years of my career, I worked inside a global multinational company, eventually running the global sustainability program for that firm. And then I left to work with a consultant who was beginning to talk about what we now call the circular economy. And so for the last 21 years, I've been consulting on sustainable circular economy. And I think as we get into the discussion, it'll become clear why I think there needs to be a marriage of these two ideas.
Nice. And we also have Rachel from the Circular Earth. Over to you, Rachel.
Hi, so I'm Rachel. I'm also a consultant in the fashion industry, helping small to medium brands move from being not sustainable, starting up sustainable, and into sustainable futures. I've been in the other area of the industry for many years, for about 22 years as a designer and design manager. So I saw the raw end of it, rather than just going straight into sustainability. And it's one of the reasons why I went in there. So that's me, I'm done speaking.
Great. And we have Kishore Shah, who just joined us from Khadi London. And Mr. Kishore, you can just give a short intro about yourself.
Yeah, hello. We're working with young ethical designers, trying to source from India, fabrics which are locally produced using local raw materials. And that's our specialty, is trying to get it as right as possible, organic, natural, hand woven or hand spun, using appropriate technology.
That's nice. And we also have Priya Krishnamurthy of 200 Million Artisans. Yes, Priya. You're not audible. No. Okay, meanwhile, let Priya check her technical issues, and I request Varna Anand, textile designer, to introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Varna Anand from India. I live in the northern part of India, which is Jammu and Kashmir, and I'm a textile designer by profession. And I do handcrafted textiles from our region, which are specialized textiles made out of pashmina, which is a natural fiber, which is a fiber got from a shirt from a goat, and you only get pashmina in this part of the world. And what we sell is the art of shawl making, which is the extensive hand embroideries on a fragile fabric like pashmina. So I have been doing this now for showcasing this art across India, and I showcase it online through my website. I'm selling my product all across the globe, and it's been 10 years since I've been doing this. And something which is a luxury textile, a niche market, and heritage textiles, one of the heritage textiles from India.
All right, thanks, Varna. And we also have Prama Bharadwaj from Mantis World. Over to you, Prama.
Hi, thanks a lot, Prithvi, and thank you, Ashrika, for inviting me to be here today. I am Prama Bharadwaj, and I've been on this.
Prama, I think there's some internet net issues. Okay, meanwhile, we'll go to the next speaker.
CEO and founder
we
of
have
a
Maria.
business to
Yeah,
business
she's back. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, Prama, go ahead. We lost you, actually.
Sorry, me?
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now, all right?
Yeah, now it's fine.
Okay, so I was just saying, I started my business, Mantis World, 21 years ago. We're a B2B supplier of blank clothing to the imprint industry. So if you've ever bought a T-shirt for your favorite band, or something at a souvenir store, or if indeed you bought something from a small independent brand who's they may have used our blank garments to create their own designs and logos. So as a result, I really do see things from both sides, from a brand perspective and also manufacturing perspective. My background was textiles by birth, because my grandfather actually built textile mills across East Africa, and we still source from them. We're known as pioneers in our industry, in the imprintable industry of sustainability. We were the first to introduce organic cotton back in 2005. And then in 2017, we made a pledge to switch absolutely everything to only organic or recycled by 2021. And we met that goal 2 years early in 2019. So that's basically me, and I'm very excited to be here and see how
Nice.
it goes.
Interesting. And we have Maria Frombello. And over to you, Maria, for the short intro about yourself.
Hi, guys. It's such a pleasure to be with such incredible professionals. Like, listen to all the introductions, like, wow. It's a pleasure. So thank you so much for considering me. I feel honored. So my name is Maria. I'm one of the co-founders of Frombello. So what we do is we turn waste into beautiful accessories with the help of artisans around my community. So what we do, we structure cooperatives and we celebrate their craftsmanship to turn all the waste that should go to landfill into our handbags and accessories.
Nice. And yeah, Priya, back to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're audible.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm really excited to be part of the panel. I'm no fashion person, so in that sense, I'm a bit of an anomaly in this group, but I do lead a volunteer organization called 200 Million Artisans. It was started as a COVID response initiative last year to support artisan communities across India, and primarily because the big brands across the world refused to pay all our artisans, and then we were forced to step in. So we've continued our work for about a year, and we're really trying to bridge the information gap, the advocacy gap, in many ways to really bring the spotlight back to the developing nations, which are really the producers and the future producers of sustainability, as I see it, and of equity in more ways than one. So excited to share what we've learned so far and learn from others.
Nice. I think all speakers have introduced about themselves, and we have speakers from different parts of the world. And though it's a fashion industry, we have from manufacturing, textile, artisans, person who converts waste to wealth, and wonderful experience, rich experience. We have people like Ken and Kishore and Brahma. Yeah, it's nice to see, and good to go. So this is more of a knowledge sharing, interactive, and to share what it is, because people today, the hot topic is all sustainability. Yeah, sustainability is fine, but exactly when you focus on the fashion industry, what exactly is happening, especially in the developing countries, and what could be our contributions to enhance certain things which we'll be looking at. For instance, the price points of clothing from this category are expensive. So this is the tagline when it comes to eco-fashion or sustainable fashion. Especially during pandemic, people are mindful of fashion consumption, right? So what changes could be brought forward so that everyone enjoys the fashion for going without harming the environment? You can share your views. It's an open and a generic question.
Shall I go first? I can be brave.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's a very, very big question, and there's no easy answer or one answer to it. I think we can break it up into smaller pieces. So what's wrong with fashion today is that we consume too much. We buy too much. We have become addicted to cheap, disposable, fast fashion in a way that didn't exist 20 years ago. So there's a lot of work to do to basically educate people to buy less, make it last, and choose well. I think it's not necessarily true that to be sustainable, it has to be super expensive. I think there's lots we can look at in the traditional retail model that can be changed. Right now, the model basically puts all the profit with the brand and pushes all the risk applied up the supply chain. So we need that to be a little bit fairer. You know, there is a pie, and everybody needs a little bit of it. Some will need more than others. We accept that, but we think that could be more fairly divided. I think one thing to be very careful of is it seems like a lot of these big fast fashion brands are going after more sustainable material, particularly circularity, which is a great thing. It's really good to go after preferred materials, but they're not addressing the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is we need to buy less. So please go after those preferred materials, but we need less. So we kind of need to pull right back and look at the pandemic and look at what it's taught us about what we actually value. And I think a lot of people hopefully have come out realizing they don't need to buy a new top every Saturday for $3. They can get by with what they have. So that would be kind of my opening thoughts on a very big question. Thank you.
Nice, Brahma. Adding to Brahma. Yeah, Maria, please.
No, I was going to say is I completely agree with you, Brahma, and I think as well that the bar was set so low with fast fashion, and people, when you compare, because what is expensive? Because it's a comparison, right? Like for you to say that something is expensive, you need to compare with something else. So the bar is already set so low with fast fashion. And that, I think that's also an obstacle, because sometimes if a t-shirt, I don't know, it's 50 pounds, that's so expensive. But of course you can buy t-shirts for £6, So you see the difference there because of the bar was set low by the industry, the fast fashion industry, and the perception of the consumer. Of course, like everyone wants a bargain, everyone wants to buy cheaper. And I think that is one of the problems. And for me, the other thing is when also when you're talking about like those big conglomerates, that they are trying to search for more eco-friendly materials. But I think most of the time people forget that sustainability is a balance between the environment and the people. And just looking at the materials that you're using is not making you sustainable, because the sustainability also comes from making sure that everyone in your supply chain is getting living wages. And I think that it's something that we need to put in us as consumers, but also into policies, like the mandatory, what's it called? The due diligence act they are trying to approve in the EU, that you need to assure that throughout your supply chain, everyone is getting living wages, not minimum wages, and that you have to be diligent about like your suppliers. And I think that also comes into question, like what policies, what the government can do to put pressure into companies, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to profit. Everyone wants to profit more than others. And if you have policies to assure that those types of things don't happen, it will balance everything out, in my opinion. But again, it's such a broad topic, I think that it's really hard as well to put that into practice, especially when you come from a big brand that that you are in the stock market and you have to perform. But still, I think that sometimes I feel that the brands and the government put a lot of the pressure on the consumer, as if the consumers always have to choose what is to choose well, to make sure that they are that they are making their that research on the brand. But it shouldn't just be the consumer. It should come from our governments. It should come from policies that make sure that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you deserve to earn a living wage. It doesn't matter in Brazil, if I am in the UK, if I am in India, everyone deserves a living wage. Living wage is different in every country, of course, but everyone should have a dignified life, Sorry, I went on for a while.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer. I mean, actually, I would completely agree on the point, because government's policies must act. Because I don't know whether it is the pressure on the consumers' buying behavior. There are so many options the consumers have in the market. It is also like the economy, like the affordability of the consumers have an impact. But even though from what I'm aware of, there are manufacturers who try to educate the fashion brands, but sometimes fashion brands ignore the manufacturer's opinion because they think like because competitiveness, and the reason why the fast fashion is more competitive rather than sustainable fashion, which in fashion that's made from handmaids or in handmade articles or natural fabrics. So how do we give competitive advantage to these artisans goods or small factories or smaller brands? So what could be the possible measures that could be taken to give competitive advantage to over the fast fashion to, yeah, that's my next question.
Hi, this is Ken. I think part of the answer to that, and it links to the first question, is how we communicate. And so I think storytelling is a big part of what we can do to differentiate those brands that have a completely different story, the handmade or the artisan parts versus the fast fashion. But I think the other part of communication for me is changing our language a little, because we're not actually consuming in most cases, and not literally consuming. It's a word that we've genericized to mean we're buying too much.
Yeah,
but I'm not actually consuming the T-shirt. I'm using the T-shirt. Yeah. And I think one of the ways we can help is to change the language that we have so that the solution comes out in the change of language. The change of language helps us to change the behavior, because we started the conversation talking about a lot of communication to change attitudes. And that is the first step, but then the next step is behavior change. And so I would start talking about use and reuse more than consuming, and use the change of language as a way to help better communicate the behavior change that we want.
Yeah, and also, Ken, I think that being transparent with your communication, like you're saying, is so important, because for us, for example, our bags are not cheap. They are at the end price, because we are sure that everyone gets a living wage, and everything is as sustainable as possible. It's not cheap. So I see brands like Veja Shoes, for example, they have pages on their website that are dedicated just to show the transparency, just to show each step of the process, and how expensive it is to do this and how expensive it is to do that, how much each garment worker earns. And maybe that's a way as well for people to understand, because everyone works. Like the people that are using or buying our products, they also work, and they want to have good wages. So I think that it helps with the empathy as well towards everyone in the supply chain. So they're like, okay, this makes sense. That's why it's this price, because like me, others need to make enough money to survive. So I think that the fact that everything was so, like you were talking about communication, and no one ever saw the other side of the fashion industry, which is the production side. People don't understand how things are made. So they can criticize price without understanding that it's actually a human being that has a family that is behind, like this T-shirt that you just wore. So we need to ensure that that person is making enough to survive.
So I think also we need to also have a lot more humility in the communications, and just be straightforward and honest about how much of a contribution we're making to the solution. And I would start by saying that, when we're talking about sustainability and circularity, these are concepts. They're concepts to try and make us change our mental model, but they're not really the solution that we're after. I would always press all my clients, but in your case, you want to be more sustainable or you want to be more circular. But so what does that mean? What's the real underlying problem that you're trying to solve? And that's why we start getting into, well, there's also equity, and there's materials, and there are so many parts to this that it gets overwhelming. And so I think part of the answer is to be, okay, focus in on what you can change and what is the problem you're trying to solve. and do it one piece at a time, and be humble in how you say this. Hey, I've not got the most sustainable product. No, I've made this small change that made something, I don't know, a non-toxic dye or whatever it is. But just be humble about the incremental improvements you're making, that over time we're going to, get to where we need to get to.
Yeah.
I think this first question itself is given a lot of perspectives, and everybody's given thought process. Just coming back to the same thing. So for example, we have other two people, for instance, Priya from 200 Million Artisans, or Varna Anand, who has a unique product from Jammu Kashmir.
And also creatives.
Yeah, creatives. Yeah. So when there's handmade, when there's unique product, the cost goes up, right? Whatever these. So from that perspective, what with respect to what Prama, Maria, and Ken said, what is your opinion on that to Varna and Priya?
So I would say I have been doing this product for so many years. It has a niche market. You see, when we talk about fashion, as everybody is talking, I think the basic directive of fashion has to change, where people in the fashion industry who matter need to start emphasizing on the fact of doing more with less. It's only then. I'm a mother of two children, two young girls, and I know what clothes mean to my children. When they see fast fashion and they see that they have an option of going and picking up something new from somewhere which doesn't cost too much, nothing is going to stop them. The concept of fashion has to change. I have been dealing in this product, it's handmade, but like I said, when I introduced myself, I have a very small niche market for it. It's going to be somebody who's a collector, somebody who loves this art, somebody who loves this textile, who's read about this textile, who reveres this textile, who is going to cherish it. When you buy a shawl, we say you're good to go for 50 years. There's nothing which is going to happen to your shawl. You may be paying a lot, but nothing. It's an heirloom which you pass on from generation to generation. So then again, that is, like I said, only a concept as far as handmade and my product is concerned. It is not with the fashion industry. It's not the same.
Priya?
So I'm not going to address this from the perspective of handmade, though I run an organization called 200 Million Artisans. I think the core question that all of us need to ask somewhere along this whole, in this discussion is, for one, what does success mean to each one of us? Because as an enterprise or a consumer, or as an intermediary, or as an artisan, I think it means different things to different people. And we have decided these benchmarks or adopted these benchmarks that have been set by other people without once questioning what does success need to look like. And to give you a very small example, why does any brand or any enterprise need to scale at any cost and to whatever extent without any questions asked? There is also, here is where the elephant in the room is, which I believe is the elephant in the room. One is policy, but the second thing is also the pressure of investment. The way our financial markets and the pressures of finance are structured today expect enterprises such as ours to grow at any extent without taking into account whether we are paying our people, even if we want to pay our people, whether we want to do what is right by the environment. Are the supporters, the consumer, which is one kind of investor, and the second one is the equity and the finance guys, who tell you to scale at any cost without one taking into account how are we contributing to the environment, how are we contributing to, and this is, unfortunately, it's the investment community that sets the narrative even for policy, which is something that even as enterprises, we need to come together and say, this is something we don't want. I mean, as people who are advocates of sustainability, I think it's not just the consumer, like Maria had pointed out, but the onus is not just on the consumer. The onus is also on other actors within civil society who are then driving this narrative for unreasonable success. If we really have to be sustainable, if we want to leave something back for children that we choose to have tomorrow, what are they going to come up with in a world where there are no trees, there are no people, there are no traditional skills? And even when we work with artisans, the reason why we have started advocating for enterprises, one, to what Ken said, it's important to communicate that transparency and now to pick a side. It's not enough for you to be a fence sitter and say, hey, I'm a sustainable brand. What does that mean on ground when it means that, how much are you paying? Is that all clearly communicated? Because it's not enough to call yourself a sustainable brand. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. Because at the end of the day, what has happened post the pandemic? Why did 200 million artisans come on? Why did it have to happen? Because the biggest brands, luxury brands, we're not talking about poor, MSMEs and SMEs. These are big luxury brands who source some of their biggest and get their most exquisite products done from karigars and traditional artisans in India, left their artisans high and dry without paying them. And despite having things like the Uttan Pact and, we will do right by people, where is the implementation? And this is really where small enterprises and people who really believe in sustainability also have to step forward and say, you know what, we will stand for it, even if the big brands do, and hold the big brands accountable. Because this is also, interlinked to policy and finance. It's not, this discussion cannot, happen just within ourselves. It needs to move to the places of power, as far as I can see.
Priya, can I address this? I will agree with the points some of Ken has addressed, and also like you were talking. Yes, it is. See, when the subject is, issues like this is system driven than individual, an enterprise or a small enterprise driving. So system is more powerful when all small enterprises come together to a stand and address the matters. So when you talk about sustainability, it is you're talking about eradicating poverty, behavioral changes in the way business conduct their businesses, and giving competitive advantage over fast fashion brands or companies, or even from be it manufacturers or so can I put together in this context. And so how we as everyone standing for sustainability is going to address that? Is it from the state of the fiber, or it is like how we all can address this matter? Because media has some power to address or challenge the government's action. So what will be your opinion on that? How this could be addressed? Be it Ken or Prama, anyone could. Kishore, you're from Khadi industry. So what do you think about your opinions? You're working with, you're a social enterprise.
No, I think instead of trying to address the power structure issues, why not develop alternative power structure yourself from the bottom?
Yes, I agree with that. Starting from the fiber.
Yeah, starting from the fiber, starting from the farmers.
Yeah.
And the seed. How do you do that rather than just going against the corporates? And there are corporates who are working in this direction. And we have found in India, there's a Swiss corporation which has been working in Tanzania and India, working with farmers, creating seeds which are sustainable, which are indigenous, which are non-GMO, and making sure that the whole system of farming works with them, and then taking it on, forward to spinning and weaving. And then it was a very situation we came in about 3 years ago. One of my colleagues, they were trying to source cotton from Uganda and get it made in Malawi. So they had to source the cotton from Uganda. There was no spinning and weaving facility in East Africa, which used to have a very good textile industry at one point, just a few decades ago. They had to take it to Germany to get it spun and woven. And then it came back to Africa, to Malawi for getting it. So how do we get rid of this kind of supply chains? How do we have supply chains which are local? So if the cotton is grown in one place, how do we make sure that the cotton is spun there, woven there, and made into clothes there?
So do you think so? Asking the government to have high import taxes on polyester goods, will that be an option? Because when you have high imports on polyesters, because we are living in the world of plastic rather than living in the world of green. So could that be a possible action?
I would say ban polyester.
To embrace the point that you, because alternatively it could open doors for natural fabrics.
I think that needs to be more than just tariffs in terms of polyester. Look at there needs to be education on how much harm polyester is doing to the environment, to the oceans especially.
Yes.
And I think that understanding had just begun a few years ago. So how do we spread that across and say that the cost you're paying for polyester is just not what you're paying in terms of pounds, but the cost you're paying in terms of the environment. And
yes, true.
And I don't know how you can go around. No, I don't think tariffs is going to be a sufficient answer.
Oh, there will be an answer, definitely. If there's a problem, there's always a solution. So, and hence the reason why we started the Evolution Club, like people like yourself to come forward and just not talk about these matters, because everyone is talking about these matters. But the point is how we are going to act on these matters is a crucial thing. Like when all small enterprises could come together and talk about it, and yeah, that's a different discussion actually altogether.
I think Priya has something to tell you.
Yeah, so I can quickly jump in to talk about small ways in which we have started addressing challenges within the system, and these are systemic challenges. And of course, some of these challenges, unfortunately, it's not a black and white solution. So if you're expecting black and white answers, those black and white answers do not exist. But information is one area which is a big gap. And this is not just information and communication for consumers, but also information and communication for policymakers as well as the investment community. Because when we first started talking to the investment community, when 200 million artisans started, none of the investment community wanted to invest in small enterprises because they did not know what is the kind of impact in enterprises such as yourself are creating and driving on ground, creating the kind of, supporting the kind of people that you're doing, because there wasn't any visibility that these sort of big investors have. Because at the end of the day, if you need to drive large, big ticket change, either the corporates have to pump in money, some investor has to pump in money. And that's where, there has to be access to resources. Because if you create a wonderful solution and if you pilot a really small solution, if that solution needs to scale or it needs to grow bigger, then you need access to funds and resources and a supportive community. How do we build that supportive community is the question that 200 million artisans started out with. Because we also realized that there were so many indigenous homegrown models in India that we did not need to look to the West really to understand how we need to address challenges in India. So from an information gap perspective, the first thing that we have done is come out with a report, which was commissioned by the British Council of India, where we have looked at 12 enterprises from, a massive enterprise like Jaipur Rugs that, supports 40,000 artisans to a singular artisan-led enterprises that supplies to, fashion brands. So when we started documenting these models, now it's, coming out in the open for both enterprises such as yourselves, communities such as yourselves, investors, as well as with policy people to at least access and read what is happening on the ground. We don't have enough information and data-driven insights about what is happening in countries like India. That's one piece of it.
Yeah.
The second piece of it is also, if we look at solutions, everybody wants to today solve an issue by building a new solution. So what we decided to do, instead of building a new solution to create access to markets, we partnered with a global sustainability startup called Queen of Raw to distribute their solutions. So in that way, it became a win-win for everybody involved because the enterprises in India wanted access to global markets to sell dead stock fabric, which they now have. And Queen of Raw, which is committed to sustainability, wants to give back to communities in the developing nations and also find new markets. So instead of building another blockchain-led tech solution and putting in that kind of money to create multiple duplicates of the same, can we come together to find ways to work together? That's the other way in which we are addressing it.
I agree with you. I have a question from someone from Assam. I'm from Assam, and these are a lot of natural fibers which can be available if government makes it possible. Due to lack of communication, artisans do not get that platform. So it is Titiksha from Assam. I mean, Priya, I think you're the best person to address this.
We've documented, access government bureaucracy quite extensively in the report that we are coming out with, and also the challenges of informality. I think we also have to get out of this whole binary between, there's a formal enterprise, which is the factory-led model, and there is the informal sector, which is like, villages and blah, blah, blah. We have documented models which are so fascinating, where they operate like a formal social enterprise, but all their operations happen, and they have actually allowed for informality. They have allowed for doorstep entrepreneurship. They have allowed for creating workspaces for women in their backyards, because women don't get out of their houses. It's these kind of challenges that we need to address, and we need to know about this. So when we talk about Assam, in fact, we have a wonderful story of somebody who's addressing these challenges, and they have actually created a yarn bank. When we talk about natural fibers and access to raw materials, they've actually created a yarn bank. It's called the Zuta Thread Bank Initiative. And it's a fascinating initiative, which is also creating social protections for women that they employ. Now, Titiksha, I would only recommend that you would please do read our report, but also look around what is available and become that person who is willing to connect those dots and solve the problem. Because the government will take time to come through.
Priya, can I ask a question? Just, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed, but it's just because what you're talking about, it's a funny thing, because I'm in Brazil and we have a lot of artisans, like it's a big thing. And you're talking about the informality is huge. And I thought someone was talking about, raising tariffs to make sure that we have more natural fibers available, for fabrics and stuff. But I was reflecting on it with two things. One is raising tariffs doesn't work, because I think that the truth is we need infrastructure. I think that is the biggest problem. I feel like, I don't know if it's the same in your region, but here in Brazil, we have so many artisans and they don't have the education. They don't have the infrastructure to, to even stand against people that want to buy their stuff, but from these bigger corporations. So I think that's such a big problem. Like for us, we had to build cooperatives, and we had to teach them how to negotiate price. We had to teach them how to work in different machinery. We had to teach them how to think outside the box, because they only know how to do one thing. And if someone asks, say, oh, can we try something else? They'll be like, no. And that is also something that is a barrier. So I wonder if part of the problem, like the root of the problem of these barriers and on all of those things that happen, and also like how they exploit it, is because of the lack of education and the lack of the government actually investing money into creating these infrastructures. Like I have a cooperative in Brazil that they are rubbish collectors. I don't know if you guys have that there, but we have people that collect rubbish from the street, not government people, normal people, and they sell. And then they found a way to turn plastic bottles into fibers that make the most beautiful products. And I was like, wow, like it would be great to work with them. But because they don't have the education and they don't have like the infrastructure, they couldn't go ahead with that project. And we didn't have the money to support them. So it was such a shame. And I was thinking, is that something that government needs to change? Because I know it's such a long-term investment. And for governments, everyone wants to see, at least in Brazil, they want everything to be in the short term, so they can be like, see, I did this. And education is not a short-term thing. So my question is, I'm sorry I talked a lot, but do you think that part of the problem that we face with artisans, that we face with labor, and for example, this girl was talking about the yarn and not being available, it's also because of education?
Maria, I think the example you just gave is a great one, because it talks about professionalizing something that was in the informal economy. So you had the informal economy waste pickers who were essentially professionalized and made into material managers. So in a way, you change their title from being a waste picker to being a material manager. This is another example of why I say communicating and changing the words we use helps to change how we look at things. So now those people in those cooperatives are material managers and they're not waste pickers anymore. So I think this combination of getting people together, giving them the tools, it might be just a uniform and some gloves, right? So that, and some access to some equipment in one location where they can combine all of the materials they picked and do something with them. But this professionalization of something that's that is informal, I think is an important concept.
Yeah. I think, before we move on, I think, Prama, you have something to say? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This is fascinating. So I'm kind of torn between wanting to share and just wanting to listen. I just wanted to share a few things that we have done, just going back to Ashwika's question about collaboration, small brands, how do we change things? And one thing that was quite interesting, as was said earlier, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of big brands cancelled orders, refused to pay for goods that are already shipped. And it was, frankly, it was horrifying. And there's a special place in hell for them. So that goes back to saying how the risk is always pushed back up the supply chain. And we didn't do that. We promised all our suppliers who we've worked with for many, many years, making the same product year in, year out, because we're not fast fashion. We promised them we would not cancel any orders. We would not ask for any discounts. And that was something that I think they suddenly thought, okay, well, maybe Mantis World doesn't have the same volumes as an Inditex or an H&M, but we want to work with people like you. Because when push comes to shove, what's going to happen? And what was very interesting, it came back to help us very quickly. I mean, I'm not sure if you're all aware, but there is a crisis in organic cotton at the moment, where the price of yarn has pretty much doubled in a year. Yes. And there is a problem in trying to actually get supply of it. So our factories turned back to us and said, right, we've got organic cotton in stock and we're keeping it just for you. We're not going to sell it to anybody else. We're not going to give it to any new customers who are all clamoring for it now. So that kind of is an example of how a partnership approach really does help both actors. Going back to sort of the policymaker, I have a little story about that. I'm the chair of the Pan-Africa Sourcing Working Group for Textile Exchange. And what we realized is that there was, most countries in Africa do not allow GM cotton, but more and more were starting to allow it because of all the lobbying by the Monsantos and Bayers and big agro-industry companies. So a few of us small brands, a little bit of help from a foundation, just basically passed a hat around and said, right, let's get a white paper. Let's give an alternative narrative to what the big guys are saying. And we created a research paper on the alternative side of why actually organic is good and GM is something that is very, very risky for African countries. So that went out, and as a result, we had the Tanzanian government saying they're not going to allow GM cotton into Tanzania. So that was a big win for really a small bunch of actors coming together. And Kishore, I know who you mean in Tanzania. I just wanted to say we do have spinning and weaving in Tanzania. But the problem is you can't get from Uganda into Tanzania.
This was from Uganda.
There's another problem there in terms of moving between countries, which I think needs to be solved. And the third thing, I'm talking very quickly here, but the third thing I wanted to share with you is what we've done in terms of communication. So as I think I mentioned, we have a long chain of people after us. So once our garment is sold, it's not a Mantis World garment anymore. It could be a 200 million artisan garment or any other brands. So what we did is we wanted to really reach everybody on the line to say, look at the provenance of our production. We've done so much work on it and it kind of gets lost. So we created these QR codes, which anyone can scan with the mobile phone. And on those QR codes, it tells you in milligrams and kilos and kilowatt hours how much carbon, energy, water, and pesticide use you have saved by choosing that particular product. So it takes sustainability away from the sort of fuzzy kind of academic discussion, and it gives you actual data points, which I think has been really helpful for people because they can see exactly what difference their decision is making. The other thing we show is the complete traceability. So for us, a lot of consumers really want to know, I think, I'm not sure who said it, maybe it was Maria, that the production side of fashion is lost. No one knows. It's like a curtain is down. So we lifted that curtain and we go back to the cotton fields, to the spinning, the knitting, dye, every single stage. You can click on that and it will show you a picture of it. So those are some examples from our side and our experience that we feel have been really successful. And I'm happy to share more with if anyone wants to get more information on it.
All right, Brahma. So I think most of the speakers have given their perspectives and the thought process on the first question. And I think, Rachel, you're mostly on the listening side. So you have anything to add on to it?
Prithvi, I have a question. Okay. I mean, this was also like came on board to me. One of the football club team, they were producing a lot of bamboo articles. So, just because of sustainability, everybody is going towards organic cotton, bamboo, and artisans. So just because of making more of these are going to be environmental friendly again. So what are the boundaries laid out and how we are going to measure sustainability? Because consumers, we can always buy, buy. So how is that going to be environmentally driven? And what measures must be taken? How you are going to define sustainability in that action to drive the environment? Any? Yeah, Kishore.
Well, look, for me, the problem is that when we only talk about sustainability, we're stuck in a paradigm that's been around now for 34 years, and we're less sustainable today than we were 34 years ago when the UN Commission first came out with the definition of sustainable development. So we have to get away from the concept and get into the real world, and the real world, unfortunately, is very complex. And so there isn't a magic set of metrics that you can just put on the table and say that this is how we're going to measure it. And this is why I said we have to, I think, bring two things together. We have to bring all of the ideals that are in the concept. I think
people measure, like Prama said, there is a measure. Like even if you see, my friend booked Uber, it says carbon emission 50p. So people are charging for carbon emissions. People are measuring carbon emissions. Today, technology is very big. So there is a measure. So when the sustainability is...
No, there isn't a measure. There is a measure that you've just quoted for carbon emissions. But I could name 1,000 other measures, and you're not going to put 1,000 measures out. The consumers are going to get totally overwhelmed. You're suggesting that we select a few measures that are indicative of areas of sustainability. So let's get really honest, and a few measures that are indicative. They're not measuring sustainability, because I can do wonderful things for carbon and do terrible things for toxicity. So you have to be very careful that you don't get into these complex changes where you make one good thing happen and 3 bad things happen at the same time and only talk about the one good thing. Because everything's interconnected. It's not that simple.
Yeah. Yes.
I do. So because I think that I personally don't like the word sustainable, because no one is sustainable. What is sustainability?
It cannot be sustainable.
For me, like, I'm only going to be sustainable when I die, because as I'm talking, I'm putting emissions out there, So what is it? Like for me personally, like when you're talking about like people looking for more natural fibers, which I think is great. But the solution for us to be more balanced, not sustainable, but like create that balance for me is upcycling. So understanding like the circularity of things. So everything that you produce now, you need to understand what's going to happen, like at the end life of everything that you're producing. So for me, what I do with Bello, like Prama does, we put everything, like how much we're using of everything, what we're saving from landfill, but what happens to our bags after no one wants them anymore? And then after, I think that's for me, that's understanding what is sustainable, because the circularity needs to be there. And the same goes with artisans, for example. For me, like our business, the circularity comes because we take from a place, we our artisans make the stuff for us, but at the end, after we sell our bags, we donate to charities in that community.
I
Because
think charities do sustain. I mean, act on sustainability. Giving to charity is not a sustainable action, according to me. What charities do after that?
so what we do with
Is
our
there a traceability?
Yes. So what we do is, because we're highly in the community of our artisans. This is where I live. Like this is my community, and for us, the sustainable way for us to make a community better, or to make the world better, is to elevate impoverished communities. And for us to elevate these impoverished communities, we need to work. We can't rely on governments. Like from a third world country, we all know that, like the governments, at least in Brazil,
How do
we
you
can
create opportunities for those kind of communities?
Yeah, so the creation, what we do is we work with key charities that help solve issues in the community. For example, for us, we understand that each community is different. Some communities, they need education. Other communities, they need something else. So we need to identify. Right now, we work with one community because we're really small. And in that community, the problem is waste, because the waste in Brazil is deadly, because it happens a lot of floods and it's horrible. So waste, poverty, of course, and mental health issues, because we have a very chauvinistic culture, and domestic violence is a big thing here. So what we do, we take that waste, of course, not all the waste, but we're taking waste that we can, transform into materials. And on the way, what we do back, we invest in charities, one charity in particular called Casa de Maria, that was created from a woman in that community. And she feeds people that don't have, that I need. So apart from feeding, she also has volunteers working with people for them to learn how to read and write. And they help teenagers in that community to pass their exams to go to university. So I volunteer there every week. Like we know where the money is going to, like we buy the food for them. And now we partnered up with another charity in the same community that is training. We just trained 9 psychologists to work in the area with victims of domestic violence. So for us, this is our way to elevate the community. Of course, we're not going to help everyone, but little by little, that circularity, for me, that's what brands should do. Because you cannot just give jobs, which is great, but you also need to understand how you can help the structure of a community for them to be elevated.
Sustainability is a very big issue. So we have another
So
30
one second,
minutes. So I want to
Ashwika, I think
cover certain interesting topics, like we have a lot of questions to cover as well. Like when it comes to creative industry and small scale industries, the opportunities are not much given because of certification, and that is something everyone is talking about, and many people want to know about that because it's a lot of greenwashing. So how could that be addressed and give competitive advantage?
I think
Which
I'll go back to
certification are you talking about?
There are certifications like SEDEX and GOTS, and only like big factories and big companies could afford that. But what's going to happen to the smaller ventures? When you're talking about sustainability, there must be opportunities given to smaller businesses as well. So how that can be changed? How change can be brought forward?
I think there's lessons to learn from India on this.
Sorry?
Lessons to learn from India on this.
From India on this? Come forward.
So there's something which is called participatory certification, which is happening, especially in organic foods. So it's peer groups that decide. The village comes together, or several communities, and they decide what are the parameters we need to certify other farmers. And then they do it amongst themselves. And there's a lot of trust involved. There's a lot of storytelling involved, which Ken talks about. There's a very decentralized system of building trust, building stories, and maybe you can call it certification, and replace that with fair trade or with GOTS or with better cotton initiative.
So those are affordable for smaller factories, you mean to say, and
Yeah, it can be done. It can be done for smaller factories also. We're trying to do that with the work people we are working with for textiles. See how we can do the same thing, extend the agriculture part into manufacturing, and again involve the communities and the artisans and deciding what the parameters are, and then monitoring those parameters themselves, and then telling the story.
So you think that alone is going to help? I doubt it. Is that alone going to help? But I mean, because the buying power.
If you do it on a large scale, I mean, in India, most people buying organic foods, they don't go for organic certification.
That is local.
No,
because,
I mean, even if you're in Tamil Nadu, and if you're in Madras, Chennai, there's a shop which people know that is selling. If it says it's organic, and they source from all over Tamil Nadu. And you need more and more of those, and then networking amongst this.
I mean, I'd like to jump in here and add to what Kishore says. I think somewhere as enterprises, and this is what I think I started with, but somewhere as enterprises and people leading this discussion, we need to step back and also look at what is available and build more trust-based relationships. Because like Kishore said, there are, so you don't have to pay $500 to get a certification. If you can actually trust, participatory exercises which are happening. I mean, Kishore just gave one example, but another example that we ourselves are part of, which also provides for community certification, and it is peer-reviewed certification, is a platform called Good Market Global. And again, they're trying to sort of disrupt, communities coming together and to help communities peer review and identify other enterprises that are doing well. And I think we are also advocating for those kind of methodologies. Even going back to something that when we talk about sustainability, since this is a sustainability conversation, the other aspect that I'm really curious if most enterprises are willing to look into, because this is already happening in India, is are you willing to share credit? Because if it's a fashion enterprise and it is design-led, then there is an assumption that the designer is more important than the other person. But today we are seeing enterprises that are also willing to co-create. They're using language and narrative and discourse like co-creation and co-ownership, which means basically it basically means that if you're leveraging artisan skills in India and using traditional ways of working, it means you're not paying for their IP. You're assuming that traditional knowledge should come to you for free. But now there are new governance models and business models coming in India, which say that 51% of we only, as an enterprise, I only own 51% of my enterprise, and 49% of my enterprise is actually owned by the community. Now, this is not just happening in India, it's also now starting to happen in the US with models like the Zebras Unite coming, who are advocating for worker ownership, who are advocating for cooperatives in technology. So I think, once again, to go back to talking about sustainability, we need to address what success means for us. And it needs to begin with
I agree.
Enterprises.
Can I say something? I'm kind of just listening intently and enjoying the conversation, and it's so rich. And I acknowledge everyone for sharing. I feel the same. It's kind of a systemic problem that we need to address overall. When I look and zoom out in terms of like a whole systems thinking, very much we need to look at how we address this, not just at kind of like the governmental level, but also what we can do in our locality, what we can do in terms of collaboration, in terms of building cooperatives and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm very much kind of sitting in the space of looking at rewiring the economy, but that doesn't have to come from Boris Johnson. That can come from us as building businesses that live in this kind of structure. Yeah, like a regenerative thought process towards it. So I'm not going to go too much because there's many people here and there's lots of questions I hear.
Yes, I completely agree. It has to be a systematic approach rather than organizations coming together, forming a union, talking about, not just talking, but Priya said, like how success is going to look like for us. For me, when there are no brands like Primark, that is going to be the success of sustainability. I think so.
I think that everything can be a pocket of change. Like we as artisans and people who are doing stuff in sustainability and regenerative thought process can start to collaborate together, and that we can be as big as these other companies who have been in the monopoly of the last sort of 2 centuries as one. Like, why not? Anyway, I really.
A lot of creatives, not just in the back end of the industry. Many people are talking about India, even in the UK, a lot of creatives, like I've been talking to many people, even they have to do jobs. Creatives are killing creatives. And fashion industry people are used to getting things for free or for very little, and they don't want to pay. Everybody wants to start their own brand. Is that going to help sustainability? They're killing each other rather than helping each other.
But it's a little bit like we were talking about, someone was talking about earlier on, more of like having enough, sharing enough, and it not being about creating like huge GDP growth just for one person who sits in one chair. It's about having different kinds of chairs that maybe like 10 of us share this chair. You get me? Yeah. Rewiring an economy and a thought process towards like real thrivability for what we're doing.
Well, one of the things that I'm working on is trying to find new tools to fit some of these gaps, because that idea you just put out there, like sharing chairs and things, we don't have a way to know what's available in our own cities. I could think of something, I don't know what, let's say a 3D printer, and I might have an idea for something I want to create a prototype for. And do I go and buy a 3D printer because I need that? Well, I have no idea where the 3D printers are in my cities, but there are probably 5 or 10. And so I think this idea of using the power of the internet to help make this connectivity happen that we haven't had to this point, then you're going to know that there's somewhere where you can get something and share it with someone else. And that will help reduce some of that pressure that we talk about consumption, but it's really use. But that's one of the things to do.
Technology has brought us together. That's wonderful. But don't you think so? Technology is also a reason for a lot of chaos and sustainable and action.
Well, social media that spreads false information certainly is.
Yes.
But, I do a lot of speaking at universities with young people, and I'm always asked the same question, which is, so what can I do? It's always, this is the big problem, is what can we do as individuals as well as collectives? And I think part of what we can do is we can reach out to the young generation that's coming through, and that teenage to college years, and help them see some of these great examples that we've had so far on the show today, of things that are happening that they can proactively move towards and away from the fast fashion side. So I think they need to see things they can do. And I think they can use social media proactively and reach out to whoever they buy something from, whether it be your shoes or your socks or whatever it might be, and just ask questions, ask really pointed questions about sustainability, about circularity, about whatever you're passionate about, and say, what are you doing about X? And believe me,
there are so many
companies will hear when they get enough questions asked.
Ken, there are so many passionate individuals I've seen. The generations like from your generations.
Yeah.
They really work very hard and they try to do good, but their efforts are not recognized or identified. Even in the designer front, So there is but people. The opportunities are not given for the right people. And so,
well, I agree with you. I do a podcast occasionally. I haven't been doing it regularly enough, but I should. And on Friday, I'm interviewing and having a conversation with 3 guys in Colombia, and they've created a company that makes pencils of all things, and they do it from just like Bello, Frombello is doing, Maria is doing. taking materials that are in the waste stream and they're making pencils, something completely innocuous and small, and it's not going to change the world, right? But it's one contribution in one space. And they're doing it with social equity. They're using people who are unemployed, or are in the informal economy. They're focusing on women. I mean, they've got tremendous social peace, economic peace, environmental peace, and it's welling up from inside the community. And I agree with you that we need to showcase things like this to show what's possible.
Should we not?
And point out to young people, okay, gravitate in the direction of these things that are being made in a more circular, in a more sustainable way.
According to me,
people don't know where to go.
Yeah, but according to me, only if the governments are like taking actions, people will follow. Otherwise, people are going to go in a different direction.
To me, governments are always no.
Other way
governments are always followers. They're not leaders in this. I'm sorry.
So we need to challenge the governments then.
Yeah,
media
absolutely.
has the power to challenge, but today's media is only interested in promoting and advertising. But today's media is not challenging the government like in the past decades.
And I agree with you completely. I think that it's really hard. Like, who comes first, the egg or the chicken? Because we need government to do something, but they won't until people say so because they're scared. Elections are coming. We don't want to be the ones, spoiling the party. But I see it as well as, for example, in Brazil, where people don't have a lot of spare income. So they don't have a lot of spare income. So if you, it's a tough one because if you can't really ask someone in a poor country to like, oh, let's, you should think where your clothes come from. Like you need to really, if they have an opportunity to buy something cheaper, they will, because it's harder. Like it's easier, like in the UK maybe, but it's so hard here. So I think if the governments don't actually do something, because in Brazil, for example, our taxes are really high. So we can't afford to have like Primark here. Not even Forever 21 lasted in Brazil, because I'm telling you, like in Brazil, like for you to be an entrepreneur is hard because you pay a lot of taxes. So nothing is super cheap. So that helps, but I wonder as well that if the governments don't do something about it, if people that don't have the income will choose to buy less, or will choose to, not to feel their best, like they see other people on social media, if they have the opportunity to buy something cheaper, Yeah.
Well, I think what you're doing in Brazil is wonderful. And I think it's an example that we just have to find a way to replicate this bottom-up situation. I've been coming into South America, including Brazil, for almost 20 years, talking about circularity before it was even a word, right? And it's this on the ground, continuous education and awareness building that eventually leads to things like what you're doing. It's come as a result of 20 years of action, and I'm thrilled at what you're doing. And I want to talk to you more about it later. But I think we just have to celebrate all of these little successes, all of these small enterprises. I mean, I think one of the things in the developing world that is wonderful is you still have a local culture, a very local culture. I mean, when I go a lot to Colombia, and in Medellin or in Bogota, there are always little stores on every street on the ground floor. And there's someone who will mend something. Well, that doesn't happen here in North America where I am, right? So you still have some infrastructure that helps you with your circularity and your sustainability, but we have to direct it in the right way, which is what you're doing. You're taking something and you've taken a new concept of sustainability and circularity and merged it together and saying, okay, I'm doing my little piece. It's not going to solve sustainability for the world, but in one little place, you're doing what you can, because for me, all sustainability is local, but it's also global. And this is the complex context that we're working in, that we have a global textile industry, but in the end, the textiles you're wearing, Maria, are local in your city, right? Because that's where you are. And so the question you're asking Well, the question is, what's next? I mean, Maria Ant mentioned it earlier. When she makes a bag from something that is currently a waste material, that's excellent because you reutilize the material for another use. And so it's not going to waste. But when she's made a bag, we still have to ask the question, what happens to the bag? Because even if it takes 5 years or 10 years or however long, that bag will become unusable at some point. So what do we do with the bag? This is a continuous question we have to ask the whole time. But here I'm only speaking about materials, right, which is only one part of the situation. So I think for me, we've always got to come back to what's the problem you're trying to solve? And you can't say sustainability because there are too many facets of it. So pick elements of sustainability, whether it be economic, whether it be equity, whether it be environment, and say, okay, we have to solve for every one of these hundreds of different issues.
We can only pick one issue and solve it.
No, you can't.
No, one issue. I mean, supply chain is the key for international trade, is the key area of supply chain. I mean, of the sustainability agenda. If everyone start buying locally, and if there are boundaries in place and tariffs for, I mean, what comes in and what goes out, then to some extent, I mean, the government or the businesses are addressing sustainability. Am I right?
They're addressing an aspect of sustainability.
An aspect of sustainability, yeah.
But even if I made my garment in India and it's sold here in the US, it's been transported from one place to another. It's gone 5,000 miles, and we have to account for the carbon emissions and that.
Carbon emissions, yes.
So it's both global and local at the same time. So it depends which issue you're trying to solve. There are supply chain issues which have this, we see multi-country global piece, but the end of use issues are always local because you're using something wherever you happen to live. So it's both at the same time.
Well, yeah. So that even when people are talking sustainable, people are talking about inclusion as well. So everyone's got different agenda of addressing sustainability. So the world is calling for something good. So what does that good looks like is what we have to define. Yeah. Any interest? Any questions, Prithvi? Any questions? Anybody? There is one person who has mentioned about capitalism should be end to solve sustainability. Can we agree on that? Many companies are promoting capitalism. Hence, government is compelled to sometimes follow this trend. Companies are overtaking government policies, at least for a nation like India, where things are becoming privatized. I think private companies does much better in India, as I know. But yeah, I don't know. Capitalism is a tool. If without capitalism, the world will not run. But we should use capitalism to kill capitalism, to drive, which is for the good. And I think that'll be
well, the isms are too extreme. Capitalism, if you think of the 3 E's of sustainability, you've got economics, equity, and environment. And if you're a capitalist, you're only in the bottom corner of the E for economy. You're an ism. You're on the most extreme of just capital. And you're not thinking about economy and you're not thinking about equity. So it's not capitalism, because I can have ecologism and I can only be an environmentalist and not care about whether you make money or whether you do it socialist in a social way.
You could argue that, but socialist, I would call Kishore. Kishore, I would appreciate if you can come forward and talk your achievements as a socialist person.
No, I don't think I'm socialist.
I mean, your company,
we are a social enterprise.
Social enterprise, yeah.
An enterprise means it's enterprise, so it's part of.
You're still commercial. You're still
commercial. Even government runs commercially. Government collect taxes to do good. So you think government is not capitalizing? The concept of money has been created. Without money, a human brain is not going to work. Otherwise,
but that's not capitalism.
But that's not capitalism. Well,
that's not capitalism.
Without the world as it is now, if you see, for example, in Europe or Australia, New Zealand, Canada, even in America, where people have good quality of life, it's because of capitalism. But the problem is not the ideology of capitalism. It's not that is a problem, because if you go to socialist countries or communist countries, are they doing better? Like if you go to North Korea, they killed most of the animals that you eat because they don't have any food. Does that mean, are they being sustainable? No. So that's not the problem. The problem is the way that the exploitation, is the problem there is because we let everything go loose, and we don't really care about where we take, what happens afterwards. But that's not just a problem of capitalism, it's a problem of human nature. Because before even capitalism existed, like as a Brazil, for example, we were a colony, and people used to just take things from us. That's how humans are, that's how humans exist. So we need to rethink the models that our society have, but not because of capitalism. It's just because the way we structure things that have to change. So for example, nowadays we have the ESG, so economic, social governance, which are companies that, like in the financial market nowadays, they want to invest in companies that have those three things. So things are changing in that matter, but it's not because if we turn it to socialism, it's not gonna change the fact of we're still gonna have to take things from the ground, and we're still gonna exploit from the nature. That's not the problem. I don't know if I explained very well, but I fully disagree with that, especially coming from a country that unfortunately has a socialist background. I really don't agree with that question.
That's why there are 3 E's in sustainability. It's all 3. It's not any one on its own.
What about personal values? I think that's quite key. Cultural values and personal values. And how do we integrate that into enterprises and economy and ecology? And I think that's where we need to look at. How do you integrate the individual, the social, and the environment and the economy?
I think we're moving into a space that the past can't tell us what to do, and that we need to look forwards into what we might create as a community, as a world. And yes, there was capitalism. Yes, there's socialism. There's all of these isms that we have. But what else can we create in this with a view to balance? And that again can be from within, can be our personal balance, it can be our community balance, it can be our business balance. And as Ken was talking about the 3 E's, I think that those are the 3 main balancing pivots that society and we as individuals have to look at.
But I come back again to what I said right at the beginning, that we have to add the circularity piece to the sustainability piece. We've been trying to be sustainable for more than 34 years, and we're less sustainable today than we were when we defined it. And so there's something missing, and that missing piece is that we're stuck in the linear economy. And all of these big companies, the fast fashion, all the things we've been talking about, it's all driven about throughput, right? And they've got to sell more units to make more money. Yeah. And there's no consideration for the end of the use and what happens to the waste in manufacturing, all the way through the waste after the garment's no longer usable. And so we have to marry the two.
We don't want to see the world full of waste and recycle and a lot of products, right? We want to build a beautiful, greener environment and, what do you call it?
Well, this is the whole lesson. This is the whole essence of circularity, is that it's regenerative. It's regenerative in social and in monetary and in environmental ways.
Like nature,
Exactly. I mean, the new book I'm writing is all about the ultimate cycle, which is nature's cycle.
But I think then coming back to that, I feel that the word regenerative appeals to be much more than circular.
For sure, it's positive. It's positive and beneficial. Yeah. And this is the whole point of what we've been trying to do for 34 years under the guise of sustainability, is just to be less bad than we were before. We'll try and be less toxic. We'll try and have less waste. It's all about less, reduce, avoid, minimize. And that is part of
regenerative. Yes,
that is also part of what that misses. If you're only in the reduce, the negative mode, you're not thinking about what's positive, what's beneficial. And so, yes, It's how do we make the world better? I was on a panel 20 years, no, more than 20 years ago, probably 30 years ago, talking about design and trying to imagine a new future, a more sustainable future. And I had problems with a particular individual on the panel who couldn't see that as a designer, you had to free your mind and start with a blank piece of paper and reimagine everything. And that the idea was for things to get better, not just to be a little less bad than they were before. And so I gave an example in the car industry and said, wouldn't it be marvelous if the more miles we were able to drive or travel, the better the world got? Not just that I've switched from gasoline engine to electric and now it's less polluting. It's still polluting, just less so. And this idea of going into positive is part of what I think we need to think about is in redefining the sustainability goals. I think this is part of the problem of the SDGs. They're all rooted in this being less bad and reducing, minimizing, and avoiding. And that's part of the solution, but you're not going to minimize your way out of unsustainability. You need to reinvent and get into this new mind space that's positive and beneficial.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So how are we concluding this? So we are coming to the end of the show. So so what is the final solution?
I think hearing everybody and what I hear from everyone, the final solution to me is that change doesn't happen as a little magic wand which just goes around. It happens with small steps, and everybody at their end, if these small steps are taken, we will achieve the goal. That's how it will happen. I mean, Ken has been saying, Maria has been saying, and I think everything should be looked at as a positive in this direction when whoever is making that little effort. And that is what is going to ultimately bring about the change.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's continuous improvement and accelerated. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Wonderful.
I would add that.
Yeah. Yes, Kishore.
I mean, I think this has been a good networking opportunity and met more people. And that's the way, I mean, we have grown in the last 4 or 5 years because of networking. So how do we increase that for a positive change? That's it.
Working for a positive change. Okay, that's wonderful. I mean, today's thought process from different people from different countries has been wonderful, and Maria's contribution, to know about Brazil. I've never been there, and I mean, I have a friend who wants me to take me for a holiday, but I would love to travel one day. But yes, talking about sustainability has been. Sorry.
You can stay in my house. Just give me a shout a week before you come, and I can show you everything.
Maria, when I heard you and you said men are very chauvinistic in Brazil, it came to me as a surprise because I thought that was only limited to India.
No.
I thought that was only limited to India. I mean, it was nice to hear all that, and not nice as in it's a good thing, but here in India, this is something which we really. It's like breaking a glass ceiling. I mean, it's hard for women, it is. And particularly if you're out there in the field working and trying to do something, it is pretty hard because it's a male-dominated society.
Definitely. For us, I'm so sorry, but for us, it was even hard to start our business because we deal with waste that come from cars. So it's a dominated male, field. It was so hard, but apart from the enabling of the culture, that comes to women, especially when you go to low income, like impoverished communities, it's even worse because there's also substance abuse. And yeah, it's a real disease here in Brazil, definitely.
That's interesting. Thank you, guys. Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for joining the show. I know some of them had to rush. Yeah, now we are coming to the end of the show, and I'd like to thank everybody, and feel free to join our Evolution Fashion Club if anybody is willing to contribute. I'm more than welcome to join the club. So we need passionate people who wants to share their knowledge to the world, and so hence our media platform is interested to share what you've got to share to other people. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Can we get people's emails afterwards as well? It would be great to get in touch with everyone.